Hey, good morning. Yes, it is. It is Thursday, February 20th. So, what are we going to talk about today? Well, I thought we would do a continuation of yesterday's video on learning how to diagnose versus parts replacing. So, stay tuned. Alrighty, welcome back. My name is Eric, if you didn't know it. And yes, this is the weekday, Monday through Friday. Today is Thursday, the 20th of February 2025. So, what's the topic for today? The topic for today is trying to get the next generation, the next group of people that want to learn how to fix small engines. And it's going to be around for a while, right? We say that the battery revolution is coming, but I think it's a ways down the road. And it seems odd to me because we have all my DeWalt battery operated equipment works great, but they can't produce a good battery operated weed trimmer or push mower. I don't get it. But coming back to the ones that are coming into the trade, we need to teach them the right way. And just the same way we were taught. I know many of you probably learned by trial and error until you figured out what was the best approach. And you hear me more than once. If you've watched very many of my videos, I always say you can't learn on the backs of customers. That's something that you need to learn on your own time. If it takes a seasoned mechanic like Jason half an hour to complete, and it took you 3 hours to complete the same task, is it worth 3 hours at 120, or is it worth a half an hour at 120 an hour? It's worth a half an hour. Jason has put the School of Old Knocks in and has learned and perfected, and that comes with time and experience. The more you do it, hopefully the better you are. But the video yesterday afternoon and this morning's video it's not that you don't know, it's not that you don't want to do it the right way, it's just that nobody's teaching it. And you have these online courses. I mean, they're great to a certain extent, but nothing beats hands-on. And the best way to learn is to pair up with a seasoned mechanic and ask questions. You know, a lot of times the way I learned was just by zipping this and listening to what the old timers were telling me when I worked in the mines. Because nobody wants a know-it-all. And what I find is most know-it-alls are ones that know very little, but they feel the need to let you know that they somehow know more. And they, deep inside, they know they don't know it. But what I watched over time is the ones that didn't learn to keep their mouth shut, the old timers stopped trying to teach them because they were so busy trying to tell the teacher that they knew more than them. And the old guys had learned so many things from mistakes they had made in the past. And that is a good learning lesson, is you do learn from your mistakes. And hopefully the mistakes aren't really bad. And that you learn something worthwhile from it of what not to do or what to do, right? So I think the biggest issue that's going on today is there are less people being taught how to do it the right way. And with saying that, that ends up being you have parts replacers. And that's people just throwing part after part, hoping for the best. And as in yesterday's video, and Jason mentioned it, starters aren't cheap. But it's even worse that when you buy that new starter and you put it on and it doesn't change anything. That's parts replacing. That's not trying to figure out and diagnose what actually is going on. I've seen people take perfectly good batteries and trade them in on another battery only to find out they have the same issue. And that they just spent, a lot of times these small engine batteries, especially on four-wheelers, are over $100. The cheapy lawnmower batteries, I think, are $34 to $40 now. But still, that's money you spent that you didn't need to spend if you knew how to realistically diagnose what the issue is. Now, you could read all the books out there you want on how to diagnose things, but I think hands-on is the way to go. I think if you can see someone doing it. See, my son, he's not uneducated by any means, but there's people in this world that are book smart, and then there's people in this world that are hands-on smart. Claude can show my son how to do it, and he will know how to do it the next time without any help. Me, if Claude were to show me how to do it, I would have a bunch of questions the next time to make sure I'm doing it correctly. Because I didn't sink in. But I could read it and tell you how to do it. Because I'm more book smart than I am hands-on. And that's nothing else to slay either side. That's just the way our makeup, right? What I find the best mechanics is a crossover between the two. They can understand concepts in books, but they also can relate and learn quickly by watching somebody else do it or tearing it down themselves and trying to figure out why it's not working. And all that information of what they have uncovered gets stored, right? That's learning. But we need to start teaching people the correct way. There are a lot of people out there that are doing YouTube videos. And that's great. But a lot of YouTube videos that I'm watching of how to repair something are not correct. And it's usually from someone that's book smart but not hands-on savvy. They're missing steps that need to be done in that progression. You know, anyone that is willing to listen to me when it comes to diagnosing a small engine, the first thing they're going to hear out of my mouth is you need to check the compression on that engine. Do that before you do anything. Do you have enough compression for that engine to even run? Because if you go doing all this other stuff of putting on parts or testing the electrical system and on yada yada yada, it's time wasted, because if you don't have any compression, you're done. Now, in that progression, if it has overhead valves, those are adjustable. And sometimes they get out of whack where they're not where they need to be to build the compression to start with inside that cylinder wall. So if you're listening, I go from compression to the valves, the overhead valves. So we're getting our feeler gauges out and we're getting it where it needs to be. And we're looking at the compression tester to see, did that bring it up to a good enough range of PSI for that engine to run. And I can tell you right now, on the older engines, if you've got the valves adjusted and you're not getting up there for PSI, it's cheaper to go to Harbor Freight, grab a Predator engine and throw it on there than it is to rebuild what you have, especially if you're using OEM parts. If you're using aftermarket parts, and I'm not saying aftermarket parts from Stenz Rodi, I'm talking about buying from China, Chinese sellers, it's a crapshoot of whether you're going to get the correct parts that you need or not. You know, it's like the coil. If you're not getting fire to the plug, why aren't you getting fire from that coil? Is it a bad coil? And most of the times that I've seen when you have issues with coil, either they go just boom, or you'll see a gradual thing where it'll run for so long until that gets heated up and then it will shut down. And you can simply test that by hooking up a spark tester in between the spark plug and the boot and taking the cowl right off from it and going out and mowing with it, pushing it until it quits, and then cranking it over to see, are we getting a fire? And if we're not, good chances are that coil is breaking down. If you allow it to cool down and it starts right back up, your coil is breaking down. So you can either do your yard in 20-minute intervals or 10-minute intervals and let it cool down, or you can replace the coil or coils. I've seen where one would break down, the other one was fine, and having it run on one cylinder and then going to twin, then back to one. And then the customer is wondering why it's running rough with it being a two-cylinder. It's because one of your coils is breaking down. And we actually had one customer that we had coil testers, the spark testers on both sides of the engine, have them break down both about the same amount of time. We had brand new ones out of the box that were intermittent, would fire and then go dull and then stop and then go. That's the quickest way I know of to check the coil. If the machine is not getting fire to the coil, simply unplugging the small wire, which is the ground wire, and then cranking it over. If all of a sudden you're getting a strong spark, now we know that it's somewhere in the system from behind the coil. And that could be anything from safety switches, could be key switches getting bad. You know, there's a number of things that you're going to have to henpeck. And it could be a grounding to the frame somewhere where a wire had rubbed for so long, and now it's grounding the coils. Yeah, it's a pain in the backside to start tracing all those out. But it's even bigger pain in the backside if you're just throwing parts on. It's costing you extra money that you didn't need to spend, and you still end up having to do the same thing, is either henpeck your way back through or eventually swap out the part that's giving you issue and it fixes it. But it may fix it at 3 times the cost that it would have if you understood how to simply diagnose those issues. If you're not getting fire, if you're getting fire through the coils, you got good compression, and it's still not willing to start, or when it starts it runs rougher than heck, but your coils are still putting out, good solid bright orange to yellow, it could be your fuel. And that's why when a machine comes into our shop, that's the first thing that we do, is we dump out the old fuel. And I've had customers say, well, it was new fuel. It's new fuel from last year in a can. It's old fuel, especially if you're doing the ethanol fuel. It's even worse. And they say that ethanol can't put moisture into gas cans unless it has oxygen. And if the can is half full, it's getting oxygen. If the nozzle is open so that it can suck air, it's getting oxygen. Takes the water and it adds it to the tank. And if you have ever done this experience or experiment or watched this when I was in science class, back when I was in school, our shop teacher and our science teacher used to show us in a jar. Put a little water and put gas, and you'll notice that the gas sits on top of the water. It doesn't mix in. It separates. But you can mix it together and you'll get droplets throughout the gas, right? And that's what's happening with a lot of your weed trimmers. It's less of an issue with 2 strokes, but it still can be your issue. 4 strokes definitely with your weed trimmers and stuff. Chainsaws, lawnmowers. It's the gas that you're using. Gas doesn't keep like it used to. It just doesn't. And I recommend that you don't keep gas around very long. At the very least, dump it into your vehicle and get a fresh, if you're having it for your small engine stuff, buy it by the gallon. If you're having it for the summer, for your mowing season, figure out how much you go through in a week in fuel, and buy just that. You're going to be in town by the following week for something, and just pick up another 1 gallon or 5 gallons. But we dump the fuel after we check compression and see that we have good fire. We get rid of the old fuel if you're still having issues. Sometimes you can take, and on some of the carburetors you have the bottom bolt that holds everything together, right? But a lot of times you'll see a little side bolt on it. And if you take that out, it's a drain plug, and it will allow the water that's sitting in the bottom of the tank to run out. And what Claude does is he'll turn the fuel on, open up the bottom of the fuel bulb on the bottom with the nut that comes out, or the bolt comes out, and he'll let that run until it smells like and feels like fresh fuel, and then put the plug back into it. And usually that'll take care of the issue, because your water over extended periods of time, if it's not being moved or what have you, is going to be on the very bottom of your tank. And most tanks draw from where? The very bottom of the tank. So that's a big issue. Just by draining off a little bit of water out of the carburetor may not solve your issue. You may have to drain it out so far until you get down to good quality gas, and then put the plug back in. But those things come with time. Those things come from doing it and learning and experiencing those issues, right? If you don't know what you're doing, you can chase your tail all day long and then finally give up on it, right? And that's the other aspect. If you want to be a good mechanic, if you start feeling frustrated with something, walk away and do something else. And a lot of times when you're working on something else, the aha button will go off in your head, and you'll go back over with a fresh set of eyes. And a lot of times with Claude and I, we're a good team, because I spot the obvious crap where he'll overlook it. He's already gone deep. It's got to be something deep, where I'm on the surface of, did you check all these common things? And a lot of times the answer is no, because he's learned from experience that, 9 times out of 10 that it's this. And it's a big issue, where that 1 time out of 10 is just simply a plug wire isn't completely on the plug, so it's not getting good contact. that aha moment. So I'm going to start wrapping this up. But the key thing is everybody has the ability and capacity to learn. It's how you learn. Whether you're book smart or you're hands-on smart or you're the best mechanics are the combination of the two. They can understand concepts when they read it and understand kind of what you should be getting for results if you do these tests, and then being able to apply it and learning that sometimes the tests aren't exactly the way they should be and they need to be tweaked a little bit. But the biggest thing is you don't want to learn on the backs of your customers. And the best way I know to have someone learn how to become a small engine repair mechanic, a good one, is to pair them up with an old timer that is really good at it. And if you're young and you're just getting into it, even if you're older and you're just starting into it, you actually probably have got the one leg up because the technology is changing so much right now, and what is at your disposal of how to do a lot of this stuff. And it's getting so a lot of your equipment, especially farm tractors and that, but I'm seeing it on lawnmowers now. You're going to have to plug that unit in, and it's going to have to tell you what the issue is. Where before it was all done by ear and sight, and it's going to be an iPad or a laptop or plugging it into your phone, running a program to diagnose what's going on with that engine. All right. So on that note, you guys have a great Thursday, and we'll see you here bright and early tomorrow morning. You guys have a great day.